Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are. And welcome to the FIWARE Circular Economy Day. My name is Oliveira, and I am the Press and PR Manager here at FIWARE Foundation. If I do tend to speak too fast, please do let me know. I would like to thank you all for joining us today for this very exciting event. And let me tell you why this topic is very close to my heart. Even though there is only one planet Earth, by 2050, the world will be consuming as if there were 2 or 3 of those. If we keep following this pace, global consumption of materials such as biomass, metals, and minerals is expected to triple. And annual waste generation is projected to experience a dramatic increase. Since the Industrial Revolution, economic growth has been based on a take it, make it, consume it, and dispose model, and that needs changing. Smart digital solutions based on open source models have a lot to contribute. Through outstanding keynote and specialist speeches from experts in the field, as well as real-life use case, this event will highlight how open source technology is contributing to mitigating climate change, boosting resource efficiency, and creating far more efficient and sustainable production and waste management processes. Before I jump into the stellar speakers lineup for today, I would like very briefly to go over some housekeeping with you. First of all, we ask all attendees to mute themselves and to turn their cameras off to avoid any connectivity issues. Secondly, this is a live event and is being recorded. By attending this event, you agree to the recording, which will be made available on the FIWARE YouTube channel afterwards. For the first part of this event, the audience can ask questions straight after each presentation. So we please ask you to drop any questions that you might have into the GoToMeeting, the platform that we are using here, into their chat. If possible, adding the name of the speakers for whom the question is for, and we will do our best to incorporate all the questions. For the second part of the session, the use case session, we will host a single Q&A session at the end of the third presentation. Last but not least, I take the opportunity to thank our premium media partner, Business Reporter, as well as our media partners Compact List, our Future Water, Topio Networks, and Zoom Global Cities for their incredible support with this event. For those of you who might not yet be familiar with us, FIWARE Foundation is a non-profit organization that drives the definition and encourages the adoption of open standards implemented using open source technologies to ease the development of smart digital solutions across multiple domains. Now, count on you to welcome with me our outstanding speakers lineup. We will start with Nilgün. Nilgün, apologies, I probably have said your name in the wrong way. Please do forgive me. Nilgün is the Deputy Director, Department of Environment and Chief Industrial Resource Efficiency Division at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, UNIDO. We have with us Jared Floyd, Technology Strategist at the Red Hat CTO Office. We have Yasunori Mochizuki, NEC Fellow at NEC Corporation. We have Robert Brears, founder of Future Water, a media partner of the FIWARE Foundation, and also an accomplished author. We have Dr. Amani Alfarra. Apologies again, Dr. Amani, if I said your name in the wrong way. Water and Resources Officers for the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. We have Andrea Orsag, co-founder and partner at Mission C. We have Maxime Mularz, founder at Hostabee. We also will have Dario Pellegrino, researcher at Research and Innovation Unit at Engineering in Italy. We have Anna Bugueiro, Research and Development Project Manager at Sensowave. And as usual, presenting you with the closing remarks later on, we'll have Ulrich Ahle and Cristina Brandtstetter from FIWARE Foundation. Now, before we welcome our first speaker, I want to inform you that due to some very personal circumstances, Professor Sally Eves will no longer be able to moderate this event. So, if you allow me, I would like to spend a couple of minutes to set the mood here on what our speakers will be discussing throughout the event today. The current linear model of, as we mentioned here before, take it, use it, consume it, and scrap it, assumes that we are plentiful of resources, that they are available and cheap to dispose of. But the question is, for how long? The model may have generated an unprecedented level of growth, but it has limited the availability of natural resources due to rising demand, generation of waste, and environmental degradation. From the sustainable development standpoint, and Nilgün will address this issue here, the linear economy is leading to the rapid accumulation of human and physical capital. But at what expense? Let me tell you, at the expense of natural capital, impacting the ability of current generations to ensure that future generations have at least the same level of welfare. It does sound very doomy, does it not? But we can still turn things around. Are we being too positive, too optimistic? Oh yes, you can say that. A key aspect of the circular economy is that materials which have accumulated in the economy constitute important man-made stocks that can be exploited through recycling to gain secondary raw materials and be reused and remanufactured to keep products in the commercial life cycle. In the past years, the concept of circular economy has gathered people, has gained interest from politicians, business, science, tech, startup, and NGOs who are sharing, discussing, and developing circularity solutions together and using an open innovation to invent a sustainable future. And you might be wondering, what has open source got to do with it? Well, as we're going to be saying here in the next 2 hours, open source is not just a global conversation and movement. It is the practical key enabler for a sustainable circular economy. I hope I wasn't too fast, and I hope that you enjoyed this time with us and leave here today with some interesting perspectives to think about. I will now hand over to Nilgün. Nilgün is the Deputy Director of the Department of Environment and the Chief for the Industrial Research Efficiency Division at UNIDO. She also leads UNIDO cross-departmental team for circular economy, and hence why we are so excited to have her with us here. As a private sector development specialist, Nilgün has over 30 years of experience. To date, she has had very high-level positions across many different nations, including the Vice President of the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Administration in Turkey, being a founder and board member for the Turkish Credit Guaranteed Fund Company, and a founding member of the Turkish International Cooperation Agency. Without further ado, Nilgün, the stage is all yours.
Thank you, Val. Let me first thank all of you for being here today with us, and it's a pleasure to be with you. As Val said, I am from UNIDO, the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and our objective is to promote and accelerate inclusive and sustainable industrial development, which we call ISID. Let me walk us through how we live. We need nutrition and consume grains and vegetables to meats every day. We need shelter, so we build housing. We need electricity, among other infrastructural services. We build infrastructure for our roads. We love mobility. We love to take a romantic train ride or fly, zip around, transport our goods. And most importantly, we have come to enjoy and almost be addicted to the convenience of our cars. We wear clothes, shoes, use tableware, cleaning products, and a lot of other conveniences in our home, from refrigerator to washing machines, and so on. Communications has become a need in the last decades, which runs on servers, a lot of servers, and everyone now almost who can afford it has a computer. It was my first computer was a Macintosh, so when I found this picture, I could not help myself but put it in my presentation. To keep healthy, we have diagnostic services like the CT scan equipment, which helps us. We want to be trained and educated, sit in classrooms, and even in the basic classroom, you have a chair and a table, but nowadays our classrooms have, in addition to maybe paper and pencils, also computers, screens, it's lighted, it's carpeted. We want to keep healthy, so we engage in sports and enjoy the convenience of services which are delivered using physical goods, and we love to meet up with our friends and family in restaurants. So all of these goods and services come from materials, are made from materials, whether it's biomass, like our food and feed, and some of the other products that we use, metals, non-metals, minerals, and fossils. So, but what happens? We make products from these materials, and about 50% of what happens, the global environmental impacts of products are due to extraction and processing these products up to here. The next 50% is because we use these materials to make additional products, which are, for instance, we make steel through processing non-metallic minerals into metals, but then we use the steel to make passenger cars here. Nearly another 40% is due to, of the global environmental impacts are due to that. 90% of water stress and biodiversity loss is due to what we do with land, extracting minerals and metals and also water and using the land for agriculture. 50% of the particulate matter impacts are also due to extraction and processing and use to make them into products, but also as we use the products. However, all of this activity creates 80% of value added and over 90% of employment created in our economies. So they are very important. This is what makes our economies function. Looking at it in another way, all of this activity, by using these materials and resources to build residential buildings, commercial buildings, to make iron and steel, creates greenhouse gases. All this activity accounts for 74.5% of CO2 emissions in the world. Worse, 17.3% of emissions of methane, which is much more dangerous than CO2, and even worse, nitrous oxides and more dangerous gases. Like you see at this very bottom slim portion, but a gas in this category could be 150 to 5,000 times more dangerous as a greenhouse gas for our planet. Circular economy, from our perspective, from UNIDO's perspective, is an industrial economy, as I have explained. This industrial economy returns products and parts and materials into use several times, based on the principles that products have to be designed to last, values maintained for as long as possible, generation of waste and pollution are minimized, and as much as possible, renewable energy is used. Circularity can be achieved through these principles. But let us remember, it is all about products. So it's also all about their value and supply chains. Enablers to make sure that the value chains create more sustainable, more circular products are stewardship, leadership of different stakeholders, partnerships between them, and collaboration. And who are these? These are businesses, governments, and civil society organizations, but also consumers. So please remember that I'm talking about supply chains. When we talk about supply chains, we understand circular economy practices are in fact business practices. Whether it is reusing or repairing or remanufacturing a product, or whether we are using recycling to gain valuable resources from the discarded products. As UNIDO, we see recycling as a waste station on the way to circularity, because whenever you recycle, you have to add additional energy to ensure that this is recycled. And in the end, you might be ending up with a lower quality material, secondary material, as they are usually mentioned in the circularity literature, and the least, of course, desirable. And in fact, some people don't even include waste to energy into circular economy practices, but we have to, because we are in a transitionary phase, is waste to energy. So optimizing the use of products by increasing the use intensity, for example, through new business models, is where we should hopefully in the future talk about circular economy, where we should stop. Even regeneration of biomass through, for example, industrial composting requires about 140 degrees Celsius of energy. So who are the actors in this field. These are consumers, all of us, the businesses, and the governments. The role of governments is to create favorable conditions so that as consumers, we are able to buy more circular products. First of all, of course, we have to understand their benefits, and the governments have an important role to play in that. And governments also have to move businesses to increasingly design and produce more circular and safer products so that we can buy them. But fortunately, there is something that we have learned all along as UNIDO, and that is that there are economic benefits for companies by increasing resource efficiency, resource productivity. In a way, businesses can reduce production costs, they can engage in new business activities and models, and they can find new markets, at the same time enhancing consumer loyalty and reduce their improve their resilience with respect to resource scarcity. I will not say what is going to happen with the environmental impacts, because this is reduction of pollution, end of life-based emissions, water, safeguarding the biodiversity. But what about the consumers, the people? Overall, people will have will have improved their well-being, because they will live in a pristine environment. They will have better health. I wonder if any of you did know this, the Lancet report that was issued in 2015, which we also supported as UNIDO, which associated 9 million premature deaths with air, soil, and water pollution in that year, in 2015. The economic losses were humongous, amounting to 4.3 trillion per year. So overall, including through new partnerships, collaborations, and innovations and technologies that make life easier, consumers, the people, will have also social benefits. So we just to recap this part, circular economy is easier to understand than what sustainability is, what green economy is. It has the name economy in its title, but in fact, it is about products, it is about value chains and supply chains. So the actors, both the consumers, the businesses, and the governments, know better what to do. Because when you talk about green economy and sustainability, and these have not been properly defined up to now, so that they could be operationalized. But circular economy, understanding the principles and the practices, is more easily operationalized. Okay, so what have we been doing? Quickly, we have been supporting our member states with centers, with information and knowledge since 1994. So this is not new for us. We have created international frameworks together with our partners, the World Bank, the GIZ, on eco-industrial parks, and have been helping these throughout these last years to transform into more sustainable parks with 3 prongs: economic, environmental, and social benefits. We have, since 2004, launched the chemical leasing business model. We created it, which is a product as service, the first one in the industrial area. And we have many initiatives, most important of which is the regional and global consultations with our 170 member states. that we will be starting this year in November to talk about circular economy and measures to be taken. And with on this slide, when you see the slide, if it is posted, you can check out what kind of work we are at this time doing. So I'd like to, before thanking you for your attention, invite you to join us at the World Circular Economy Forum online side event on the 29th of September at 12:30 Central European Time, and you can see the link there. Let us all get together for improving circularity of the products that we use. I look forward to the discussions. I haven't spoken about the opportunities for digitalization using of open source in our work, but later, if there are questions, I can talk about a few examples. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Nilgün. The pleasure is ours to have you here bringing a worldwide overview on this very broad topic. As you said before, there are a lot of fronts to it, and I'm very happy to hear from a sustainable development perspective here. We actually have a couple of questions for you, so if you allow me, I will go through them. I hope that's okay with you.
Please go ahead.
Okay, so the first question is about the digital, and let me stress here, we will be talking about this as well throughout the event, but the first question is for you is, how do digital tools help circular economy practice on the ground with regards to recycling and manufacturing?
Let me show you, or let me just talk about the CAT scan that I showed you. It's a high value product, for example, or think of Caterpillar equipment, the earth moving equipment, very high value. It is common practice to trace and track what is called the cores of these equipment parts, basically, or components, and to remanufacture them. And tracking and tracing is now used very much using digital technologies, sensors, Internet of Things, and so on. Another area is, for example, in recycling high value consumables of machine tools that grind metals to make different parts. So, for instance, there is a company, Sandvik Coromant, which is reaching out from Sweden into every country where these consumables are used on these machine tools making the products, to help with setting up these machines so these consumables are used more efficiently, but also when they are almost finished, that the company could send a new batch of consumables to the companies, industries that are using these machine tools and the consumables that go with them. There are many other applications, Internet of Things, use of RFID chips in recycling, collection systems, and so on. So, but there has to be better collaboration between who could use these and those people like yourselves at FIWARE who can enable digital tools to be used. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And in case the audience is wondering, digital, it's all about what we do here. So the next presentations will very much focus on the role of digital in creating sustainable economies. Nilgün, if you have the time, we have one more question here, and it's related to your experience in the private sector. So the question here is in terms of focusing on manufacturing and the automotive industry, for example, what is the role of private companies when defining common protocols or action plans in this very specific industry, so manufacturing and the automotive industry? Is there any social engagement, educational plan to raise awareness as much as it happens with waste management? Is there any exemplary action that you can share with us here?
Oh, there are many actions. Just let me reiterate once again, also for those latecomers to our discussion, circular economy is about products, physical products, because it's about materials, how these products are produced, used, disposed of at the end of their first life, so that they can be reused, remanufactured, kept in the economy. That value of the materials that we put into these products are kept. So it's all about manufacturing, because all of this production activity, manufacturers decide. So what is happening is global companies who are leading supply chains, buyers, a retailer of garments, for example, H&M, or others, they are all looking into their supply chains. The issue is to get the whole supply chain, which is consisting of businesses, to collaborate and to share the same goal and to share the same incentives along the supply chain. Everybody has to win something from the measures that they take. But there are many initiatives, food companies, garment companies, anything that we use, people who are building infrastructure and our buildings, whether they are residential or commercial, in every area that, in the 6 areas that I have summarized in the beginning of presentations, huge numbers of companies are working. The one element that is required is investment, because if they are going to change the products, which means investment in new product development, replacement of hazardous materials with alternatives in these products, and to improve the resource and energy efficiency of products, which means new design of products, there has to be incentives and opportunities to access investment throughout the value chain. Today's manufacturing is distributed all over the world. Even the garment that you are wearing may be constituted from materials like textiles being made in Bangladesh, but the garment being sewn in Indonesia, and then it's shipped throughout the world, and maybe something additional, a packaging may be added in Europe, for example. And by the time it comes to you, it changes many hands and is transported, and value is added. So all of these actors have to come together, and there is a very important role for both value chain, supply chain leaders, whether they are buyers or manufacturers, and government, to make sure that it is a win-win situation for all the actors within these value chains. As consumers, our main responsibility is to demand more circular products. For that, we have to learn what they are, what are the benefits for us. And fortunately, in this whole process, we are confident that businesses would make additional money, they will not be at a loss. So it's a win-win situation, but we just have to be very concrete and support businesses, consumers, and governments.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Very nice, Nilgün. Thank you. I think you have touched upon a very important issue here is responsible consuming. I think I could stay here the whole afternoon talking to you about that. I think as a consumer, we tend to forget the role that we play in sustainable development. I want to take the opportunity to thank you once again, to thank UN for being here with us, for bringing this very interesting perspective. And sadly, the time is up, so I'm going to have to move on to our next speaker. But it has been an absolutely pleasure having you here with us, Nilgün. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, from Austria to the US, we move on to our next speaker. If you don't know what Red Hat does, I would say stay with us because you can learn all about it. Red Hat is a powerhouse open source, and we are very pleased to have here Jared Floyd, technology strategist at the Red Hat CTO office. Jared is, again, as I said before, a technology strategist investigating the intersection of emerging technology trends with Red Hat's enterprise businesses. His current focus is on IoT. We have been talking about IoT here since we started, and edge platforms and architectures. Previously, sorry about that, Jared served as CTO and founder at Permabit, developing and integrating deduplication, compression, and distributed primary storage for Linux, which I'm sure most of you are also familiar with. So Jared, the stage is yours.
Great. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation. I'm honored to be speaking here today. I look forward to when we can gather in person and have these conferences again, hopefully in the not too distant future. I think a very good point was just made, which is that the circular economy is very heavily about manufacturing and products, because it's about essentially the elimination of waste, the elimination of waste in all of the things that we do in our businesses, in our lives, in our cities. Computation itself, other than the energy used, which is quite substantial, of course, is relatively low waste. But we can continue to improve within computation our efficiency through greater power efficiency, through extending the lifespans of both the hardware and software platforms that we deploy, and by enabling new applications, because computation really isn't in service of itself. Computation exists to enable digital transformation of our business use cases, of our city use cases, of our life use cases, where we are consuming products, where we are making use of manufactured products that have life cycles, that have waste chains associated with them. So computation and technology, specific technologies I'm going to talk about. So edge computing, which is basically the platform that enables Internet of Things use cases, are the platforms that enable that greater efficiency overall. The big thing that has been changing as we adapt to moving outside of just information-based applications and to ones that affect the real world is that the concept of what a data center is fundamentally changing for application platforms. That instead of just thinking about centralized data centers with servers, with storage, where all the data flows into that central location that it's operated on in that location, and then results are then pushed back to, say, a web browser or a remote device. Instead, the massive amounts of data that are being created by applications like, say, smart cities, smart healthcare, distributed manufacturing, autonomous vehicles and so forth, that the volumes of data that are being produced, it's not efficient, it's not cost effective, it's not realistic to take all of that data and bring it back to a central location for processing. It also doesn't allow you the resiliency that you might need for independent operation, for the ability to make decisions quickly as well. And so these smarter devices that are everywhere from manufacturing floors to vehicles to devices that you might have in your pocket today, they're generating more and more data, and we need to be able to push the computation of that data from the core data center out to closer and closer to the network edge, to the device itself, to a 5G base station that may be performing data processing on behalf of that device, rather than having all of that feed back to a central data center. And so to enable that, edge computing technologies are what are building out these existing IT platforms, the traditional application platforms, and being able to extend that computation so that it can span all of these different footprints. And what this really does is allow us to bring the digital transformation that has affected traditional businesses in the IT space, building on converged platforms, building on converged data sources, and bring that to operational technology, bring that transformation to use cases like manufacturing, where smarter decisions can be made, more efficient decisions can be made, better transportation decisions can be made by interacting with real world systems. That edge computer, that digital transformation brought to the IT space software-defined platforms, instead of every time you adapted a process having to buy new hardware, having to buy new equipment, having to buy whole new platforms to deliver those solutions. That brought us software-defined platforms that have standard hardware that can be used for an extended period of time, cloud-native application infrastructure, and the flexibility and agility to address new problems with existing platforms. That this is bringing those same transformations to operational technology, basically delivering software-defined everything for platforms that have real-world interaction, real-time interaction, the ability to converge the planning of systems with the execution of manufacturing or transportation, and being able to react to changes both in the world and from engineering processes more rapidly. This is just one of a couple different technologies that are going to fundamentally impact how technology platforms can contribute to the efficiency demanded by a circular economy. That these edge-enabled distributed platforms allow for smarter decisions to be made at more locations. That AI and ML technologies allow us to create new efficiencies. That they allow us to solve problems that we couldn't solve before because we couldn't even describe what the solution had to look like. And so by having AI models that can solve more complex problems that are essentially optimization problems, we're able to deliver much greater efficiency. And then event-triggered business logic or serverless technologies are also going to make greater efficiencies available both in the data center and as these applications spread out across the world. Just one example of an open technology platform that enables this is a project that we support called Open Data Hub, which takes all of the different AI components that exist in the open source world, all freely available, all free to use, and defines how they can work together to more rapidly deploy a complete AI/ML solution. And so this is just a more concrete example of how the open source community can come together to integrate many different components, many different technologies to allow for much more rapid development of efficient solutions. But getting to an efficient economy, getting to efficient and agile processes isn't just about the technology platforms. That what technology can provide for delivering greater efficiency is making it so that we can all work together, not just within a business or within a government or within a single organization more effectively, but that we can all work together more effectively cross organizations, cross governments, across businesses. And that requires not just standards. Standards are incredibly valuable. Standards are necessary, but standards are often very slow. And so that's why open source systems allow for much greater agility and much more rapid development of interoperable systems, because the same software can be used by everyone, the same software can be contributed to by everyone. And so that provides not just the open source software that enables this interoperability, but also the definition of open architectures that are deployed in the field in multiple instances, open processes that allow different stakeholders to contribute to the co-development of these solutions, and fundamentally an open culture that allows us to work together, to not be constrained by specific, say, workflows or standards, but to more rapidly innovate on how we can deliver better solutions. So fundamentally, as any organization, as any project builds out the technologies that are necessary to deliver greater efficiency, to deliver smarter solutions, to deliver more distributed solutions, there's a choice between choosing vertically integrated point solutions that solve just one problem and then need to be replaced each time, or integrated with a completely new product each time a new solution is desired, or making use of open standards and open software that allows interoperability. That this allows for systems that previously weren't linked for efficiency planning or for interoperability to now be joined together to deliver greater efficiencies. And just to give you an example of some use cases that apply here, smart cities, that open platforms can help us deliver more secure, more inclusive, easier to use smart city platforms using open platforms, using open source software, using edge computing architectures for use cases such as more efficient transportation scheduling, be able to have transportation scheduling informed by when and where vehicles need to be for changing transportation patterns. Electric vehicle charging infrastructure is another area where everything is very data driven to allow balance across a constrained power grid. AI-driven traffic monitoring is an area where we can provide better optimization about traffic patterns, smarter responses for routing software, ways to reduce the wear on vehicles as well as the fuel consumption or electricity consumption for those transportation platforms. Again, parking optimization would be another example there, where when public transportation is not possible, being able to minimize energy waste by not having vehicles circle looking for parking spaces but knowing where they are, or enabling fleet management for shared vehicles. But open source software and open platforms are what allow these all to be interoperable solutions that can work together, where transportation scheduling can notice that, for example, that there's insufficient demand in a particular route for a bus-sized vehicle, and instead use fleet management to send a shared electric vehicle to that location instead. That this can be used for, the interoperability can be used to make sure that power is necessary for charging where the vehicles are most in need of additional power. So very short time slot, but I hope I was able to provide a good overview of how open technologies can help build the efficiencies in these operational systems that enable the elimination of waste and further circular economy.
Thank you, Jared. You clearly took me, straight off my feet there with your outstanding presentation. Very neat slides. We love to see that. For me, I think, as some of you may be aware, earlier this year, Red Hat joined FIWARE as a Platinum member. So there are many synergies there between FIWARE Foundation and Red Hat. And we are extremely excited about the ongoing joint projects, as well as the upcoming ones in which Red Hat will collaborate very closely with FIWARE. And we have here, I'll take the opportunity to thank Jean Craig. Jean has been outstanding support here for us to create all the connections and all these great projects that we are currently working with Red Hat. Thank you, Jim. So Jared, for me, you have tapped an important element here. It's about open culture. As you said, it's not just about the technology, the open source technology, the open source models, but it's also about open culture. And this is something that we cherish and we foster here among our community. We have a question for you. It's not related about open culture, but it's equally a very important question. The amount of hardware used in data centers worldwide continues to grow. So from your perspective, how can open source and hybrid clouds help to reduce waste and embody energy across all areas of the data center's infrastructure?
It's a good question. So the biggest ways that open source can help drive efficiency in these systems is by enabling longer life cycles for hardware and enabling flexibility to redeploy hardware for new use cases. So already we're seeing a shift from increasing the power density or the computational density of hardware in a single box at the expense of, say, greater power consumption. Already we're seeing a big shift to power efficiency across computation, both in CPUs and also the growth of accelerators such as GPUs and FPGAs being broadly deployed in data centers. These are all general purpose platforms, and open source is where you first see enablement of these platforms for new applications. So the ability to take advantage of say a GPU for advanced AI applications, like again, to a smart city use case, traffic monitoring, that we built with a GPU partner, a demo of using open platforms to monitor thousands of cameras to detect, say, traffic jams or accidents that affect traffic patterns. And that's all built on open platforms because the rate of innovation that's happening with these AI ML solutions demands collaboration, and the only way to effectively collaborate is through these open platforms.
Thank you, Jared. If you do have the time, we have one more question for you here. So this is coming from our previous speaker, Nilgün from UNIDO. So her question is, as we all know, currently there are interoperability challenges when applying different computerized machines in manufacturing. So the question is, how can open source technologies help these machines to work together in an efficient and agile way?
Also a great question. I think that the way that we're able to help enable greater interoperability is by providing a common platform, common software platform on which the control systems for these devices are all built. And that's done both at the lowest level with platforms like Linux or like Kubernetes for application design, as well as at the application level where we and many of the manufacturing platform builders work together in open source foundations to take what were previously closed systems for, say, manufacturing execution systems, and create not just interoperable standards, but interoperable open platforms. Organizations like the Open Manufacturing Platform, which are bringing these previously closed solutions that would differ from manufacturer to manufacturer to having a single shared platform that can be interoperable across environments.
Okay, thank you. I hope that answered your question, Nilgün. Jared, once again, my most sincere thank you for your participation. It was an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So as you know, our event is usually very international. So we move now from the US, we go all the way to Japan, where it's actually a bank holiday weekend today. So I very much appreciate Yasunori taking the time to be with us. Yasunori is very known to the FIWARE community. He is a very important member of Nexus Corporation, one of our Platinum members, and he's also a member of the FIWARE board of officers. So I will briefly introduce Yasunori, and then he will introduce us to the concept of Japan 5.0 society that he's going to be introducing us to. I want to thank all the attendees for staying steady there. It's very nice to see all of you here, and please stay with us. There are many more very interesting speeches coming up still today. So Yasunori Mochizuki joined NEC in '87, where he spent over 2 decades at NEC Corporate R&D Center. In 2013, Yasunori started working at NEC Business Innovation Unit, and as a senior vice president, he was responsible for the corporate wild technology strategy and IoT business strategy. His current role title at NEC as a NEC Fellow means that he actively participates in innovation policy proposals, global ecosystem building related to smart society and digital transformation. Today, he's bringing us a very interesting speech. He is introducing us to Japan's 5.0 and what it means for a sustainable economic growth and society's well-being. Yasunori, our very warm thank you and welcome on today's event.
Okay, I hope everybody can hear my voice, and thank you very much for the introduction, Val. I'm Yasunori Mochizuki from NEC, speaking now from Tokyo, and it's my great pleasure to join today's Circular Economy Day. And what I'm trying to do is to share some insights from Japan along with the context of creating sustainable tomorrow. Now, moving on to slide 3, let me explain what Society 5.0 is. Society 5.0 is the vision presented as the highlight of Japanese government science and technology basic plan that was formulated in December 2016. It emphasizes realization of human-centric super smart society through innovation-driven growth of economy and creation of new social community services. Cross-domain data utilization through data-centric platform is also defined as a crucial enabler for Society 5.0. And this was actually part of the reason for NEC to join FIWARE Foundation back in early 2017. In the next slide, I'm quickly showing the technology aspect. The Society 5.0 envisions to leverage the so-called cyber-physical system approach, for which IoT and AI play their crucial roles, which is no longer very surprising in this year of 2020. But more importantly, as you see in the next slide, the central target of Society 5.0 was defined to balance economic growth with the resolution of social problems. Here, you can see the challenges that Japan faces, both in securing economic growth and in solving societal problems. Note in the social problem box on the right-hand side that the top 2 bullets have strong relevance with the theme of today's webinar. And how to sustain the social infrastructures and services in the rapidly aging society is also a very big question to Japan. The Society 5.0 was announced a couple of years after the declaration of Industry 4.0 in Germany. However, its basic concept goes back and stems from the idea of Sampo-yoshi, this is Japanese, which means 3-way satisfaction. Sampo-yoshi is the business philosophy and wisdom established by Omi merchants for earning sustained trust on their businesses since mid-18th century. Omi is a region near Kyoto, and the merchants coming from this region were disciplined not only to maximize the seller's profit, but also deliver satisfaction to buyers by assuring high quality for the goods. Furthermore, these merchants also allocated their money for building community infrastructure such as streets and bridges. So it is quite interesting to see that such an idea was created 250 years before the modern concept of stakeholder capitalism came in place as a crucially important practice for businesses in making sustainable tomorrow. As you see in the next slide, NEC is the company committed to social value creation, and this slide illustrates the focus area of our new business growth. On the right-hand side is a private sector-oriented business branded as NEC Value Chain Innovation, whilst the left-hand side is for public sector partners and is branded as NEC Safer Cities. When we look at sustainable consumption of goods, for instance, this value chain innovation part on the right-hand side contributes to the loss minimization throughout the entire supply chain, as you will see in the next slide. This slide explains NEC's recent initiative called Supply-Demand Optimization Platform. NEC has a versatile AI technology that precisely gives us demand forecast, and we are collaborating with various private sector companies working on manufacturing, logistics, wholesale, and retail, and also with some data service companies. The idea here is to boost the precision of demand forecasts of AI through sharing and reuse of data across the entire value chain to optimize production, inventory, and ordering. Actually, our recent demonstration made on food supply chain confirmed that the reuse of data owned by a retail company significantly enhanced the accuracy of demand forecast for a manufacturing company. So we are happy with such positive result because the global food loss before reaching end consumers is said to be as large as 1/3 of the total amount of harvest. After goods are consumed, sustainability owes a lot to waste processing and recycling that are largely attributed to community services. And these have a strong connection with NEC Safer City offerings on this left-hand side. And I'm talking on this one of the 5 main pillars called business pillars called city management that actually leverages FIWARE in the next slide. Now let me talk about NEC's experience in delivering FIWARE-based smart waste collection solution. It was in 2015 that NEC worked with the city of Santander to build the IoT-based smart waste collection system using FIWARE. And more recently, similar solutions were deployed to Lisbon in Portugal and also to the municipality in the province of Córdoba, Spain. In the meantime, in 2016, we were asked by Kawasaki City in Japan, which is a 1.5 million population city located right next to Tokyo, if NEC could help innovate the ecology-related service. After some discussions, Kawasaki City decided to work with NEC and test a smart waste collection solution based on NEC's reference that already existed in Europe. The solution itself in the next slide doesn't look very much different from what you can find now in many cities in the world. It can sense the waste level at each collection site and shows which sites are almost full on the central dashboard and send routing instructions to the driver's waste collection vehicles. Meanwhile, Kawasaki City, for some reason, wanted to start testing this solution for some specific type of waste classified as infectious waste that are coming out from medical institutions. Thus, we replaced the waste sensing technology from waste level sensor for general waste bins placed along streets to the infrared depth sensing that was more suitable for such a type of collection stations. I believe the story I've outlined illustrates the advantage of FIWARE that allows quick replication of a solution from one city to another, and also allows agile and flexible customization depending on the locality of customer needs. In the Kawasaki case, the agile piloting did demonstrate that the total driving distance for waste collection was reduced by 16%. In doing so, the city government and the recycling companies in Kawasaki found that they should actually revise their local business model into a more collaborative one, what they call cold shared flight-like, to fully leverage such enhancement in the collection efficiency. And such a revision also called for some public regulation change related to local service licensing. In Kawasaki, there are multiple service companies working on medical waste with a trusted processing quality. And for each of the companies, the working sub-area has been respectively assigned by the city government. In this way, the community can have the trust that the waste will be processed and recycled in a trustworthy way. On the company side, this type of business has been a stable one from the financial point of view that justify their investment on processing facilities and staff education. However, they have a concern on the future decline of the driver workforce. Thus, the positive result of the pilot demonstration was indeed valuable as it triggered discussion on revision of business model and public regulation in order to future-proof both trusted recycling service and operators' business sustainability. Now, in the next slide, let me ask what Society 5.0 means to a country like Japan that is mature and aging society. Technology implementation is not the ultimate goal, but the more fundamental goal is the revitalization and the sustainability mechanism. And for this reason, there has to be a management innovation toward a self-sustaining community, even though these are triggered from the digital technology innovation. The lower chart shows the clues to such self-sustaining city management. Along the course of digital transformation, new services should become federated with holistic business model, and how this could be done critically owes to the citizen-centric problem-solving approach, and also together with a focus on region-specific challenges and opportunities. You know, all the cities in Japan are never like Tokyo, which is a huge business city. Now, shown in the next slide, in fact, Japan is in the process of sharing such reflections in the form of Japan's Smart City Reference Architecture that was published as a deliverable of a government-funded project called SIP, for which NEC played the leading coordinator role of the consortium. In brief, this architecture translates Japan's vision of Society 5.0 into smart cities. There are several viewpoints that are then classified into two important building blocks. These are city management, which is a framework for sustainable partnership and business models, and City OS as enabler of interoperability, data exchange, and scalability. Actually, there have been years of effort by smart city initiatives also in Japan, but these exist mostly fragmented so far, and such a situation has made it difficult for good practices to be shared, services to scale in a cross-domain manner, and make the community ready for changing issues over time. But with a smart city reference architecture that is to be shared nationwide, we expect now the data to become connected and start flowing, services to federate, thereby making regional communities future-proof. The next and the last slide is a message that NEC's CEO Takashi Nino always delivers in his recent presentations. Several years ago, we started saying digital industrial revolution, and then later, under the word of digital transformation, presented the idea that digital will further disrupt more fundamental operation and management of enterprises and communities. But now we are convinced that we are now looking towards digital inclusion, where overall optimization will no longer be a trade-off relationship with satisfaction of individuals. Here, society will leverage digital toward holistically optimized sustainable community, while everyone will benefit from digital to be empowered toward his or her own fulfillment. Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Yasunori, for this great presentation. I think anybody who is involved in smart cities have at some point come across the concept of how Japan is driving their digital, its digital vision. So very interesting to see. Especially here, you mentioning the replicability element of FIWARE. We're going to be addressing this with the use case. So stay with us. For the second part, we really go into more details of the interoperability element, the replicability aspect of the FIWARE platform. But here, Yasunori, I want to address a very important issue here. You mentioned about the social inclusion, and you know, it's a sheer reality that the digital divide is still an issue, especially in less developed nations. So the question that is coming out from the audience is, there is certainly a challenge when approaching cross-domain data utilization, sorry about that, since it's not easy to modify traditional local government systems that have been optimized per domain. So the question really here is, what is the main challenge when bringing Japan's vision of Society 5.0 into smart cities from other nations that may not yet be as advanced as Japan is?
Japan is actually seeing some difficulty in making quick migration into digitalized community because there are existing services for which many people are satisfied, although we see some general risk in the future of changing environment like natural disaster or aging population growing rapidly. So there is, and as you point out, there are already IT systems that are built in a fragment fashion. So for a community or industry like Japan, the big question is how to migrate rather than how to build. Whereas in countries or cities in other parts of the world which is developing, I think the it is more straightforward, or people can leverage something called a leapfrog approach to start immediately with this kind of open and interoperable platform or way of thinking. Actually, I had an open data summit held in Tokyo, which invited many delegates from Asian countries, and such leaders from the Asian countries, to my surprise, shared a very similar view of the importance of interoperability in the data platform. So, of course, as you point out, it's also very important to think more about how to take care of the digital divide that might frequently happen in developing countries. But the open source approach and the interoperable platform approach is really something that should fit in such countries as well, I believe.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Yasunori. Enjoy the rest of your day off. We do appreciate you coming during the holidays. So from Japan to New Zealand now, we will move on to our specialist speech. And when it comes to circular economy, I cannot think of somebody who is more of a specialist than our media partner, Robert Brears. Robert Brears is the founder of our Future Water, our media partner here, and editor-in-chief of the Palgrave Handbook of Climate Resilient Societies and the Palgrave Encyclopedia of Urban and Regional Features. He is an accomplished author. And Robert, you wear a lot of hats, so sadly we don't have time here to go into all the different titles and expertise that you bring to the table. So please be my guest here and add wherever you feel it's appropriate here to just before you deliver your speech. Welcome here, Robert Brears.
Thank you, Val, for the wonderful introduction, and thank you for all the previous speeches. It's really honor to be here today to talk about climate resilience in the context of circular economy this time. So we already know very well what the linear economy is all about. It's a take, make, use, dispose pattern, etc., etc. It is under extremely large numbers of challenges, from climate change to non-climatic trends, including population growth, water energy food nexus problems, urbanization. It is an economy that, yes, it has delivered enormous amounts of wealth and well-being to humans around the world, but it has come at great cost, mainly environmental and social as well. So here we have the circular economy in the contrast to the linear economy. And in the context of my presentation is that it's how do we build a resilient circular economy, resilient to climate change. So in the context of this, the circular economy is resilient to climate change by both mitigating emissions as well as adapting to climatic extremes. The circular economy also decouples economic growth from resource use, which means that it's able to reverse environmental degradation. And I just have a very brief overview of what resilience really means. There's a lot of terms here. We could talk about it all different angles, etc. To me, it kind of means you get knocked down, but you get back up again. You're able to take those blows as a country, as a city. Personally, we have earthquakes in New Zealand, so does Japan, and we both have experienced great devastation. But the people, become resilient. We plan for a future earthquake. We learn lessons from the previous earthquakes we've had or natural disasters. We've factored that into our future planning so that we become resilient in the future to a future shock. To me, resilience means that. It means that always anticipating something that could go wrong in the future. So in this context, the circular economy is trying to become resilient to future climatic extremes. Some of those extremes actually being felt right now as we speak in California. So there's actually very, very real situations that we're facing now already. So we're usually talking about 2050, 2100 even, but actually 2020 we're facing many climatic extremes. And with only 10 years to go with the SDGs, we're under huge pressure now to really create a future that's actually bright because it's under enormous stress in our current economic model. So in a very short and brief moment, the circular economy to build climate resilience focuses on what you could say is a 5R approach. And I understand there's many other, people can say there's 7 R's, there's 4 R's, there's 3 R's, but today I'll just focus on what I believe to be the most precise ones for this building climate resilience, and that is reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and restore. So reduce means that we reduce our demand for natural resources. It means we become, for example, energy efficient in our buildings, which reduces heating costs and reduces carbon emissions. And, many locations around the world, they use different types of tools to encourage reductions in natural resource consumption. Governments use market-based instruments, but also corporates can develop voluntary eco-labeling schemes. And reduce comes across all different types, whether it's reducing energy, reducing water, etc. And that means that, for instance, if our water is being used efficiently, then when we have a climatic extreme event, a drought, then we have enough water to carry us forward. The businesses have enough water. Our households have enough water. So it's about also reducing means planning ahead. It means that we factor in today's, future climatic extremes into today's planning, so that we can actually look into the future and think, wow, my city is going to be faced with a lot of extreme events. Let's start conserving our resources today in anticipation of future scarcity. So that is the first R of the circular economy. Then we have reuse, and we have these waste, and reuse, all these different types of hierarchies of a circular economy. And reuse can sometimes fall at the bottom or sometimes in the middle, etc. But this is a very, very, very critical component, particularly from the context of water, because reuse means that we can reuse our water from one process to another. It means that we can reuse industrialized water for another process in the same company or even another firm. And that's called industrial symbiosis, where one firm's waste is another firm's treasure. So reuse can be done at many different levels, from the household right up to industrial. And I understand today is about digitalization, etc. But this is trying to get the concept through to find out what can digitalization do to solve these problems. So I just thought I'd just run through these kind of ideas to get people thinking about the potentials and opportunities to reduce and reuse it so far in this climatic extreme world that we're facing. So reuse can apply it basically means without treatment. So you flush your toilet, or the industrial processes use that water, then it's used in the cooling towers, or it's used for a washing down or manufacturing process, which doesn't require treatment. This is saving huge amounts of energy. It's saving carbon emissions, saving operational maintenance costs. It saves having to have consultants and engineers come to fix these systems. It's saving the environment water, because you don't have to then go and find new water to do what you wanted to do in your present process. So you're actually being able to reuse and actually create your own little water cycle. Now the next one is recycle, and that is definitely one thing that sometimes people think, oh, it should be at the bottom of the heap of the circular economy. But in this context, recycling is equal to all the others in this model here. So we need to recycle our waste into new products. Waste comes in many forms. It comes from our smartphones having gold and all these other minerals in it. And also means recycling food waste into sewage. Waste to energy is also about taking food waste and with sewage and turning that into renewable energy. The food waste was going to a landfill, which creates methane gas. The sewage usually is just incinerated and then burnt into the atmosphere, releasing emissions. But here, the food waste can be diverted from the landfill. It can be taken to a wastewater treatment plant. It can be combined into a renewable energy source. Now, in wastewater treatments, this system, it can be done on an industrial scale, or it can be done for cities. So that means that these plants are actually 100% self-sufficient in renewable energy, which means that cities are reducing their greenhouse gas emissions. Cities are reducing the energy costs, and they're also able to create revenue streams. So this excess electricity can actually then be sold back to the national grid to contribute to a nation's renewable energy targets. So in this context, recycling is highly important and absolutely at the top of the hierarchy, you would say. And then many ways of developing this, most commonly is public-private partnerships that create recycling initiatives at the city and regional level. And one of the critical things about the circular economy is that we need to recover our resources from waste. You can't just throw a TV away into landfill or throw your phone into a trash bin and then off it goes. Our waste has a huge amount of resources in it. And because I focus more on water and these types of issues, wastewater is one example of our traditional society believes that wastewater is flushed away down a toilet, out to sea even, sometimes treated and sometimes not treated. Actually, about 80% of the world doesn't treat their wastewater. But inside that wastewater, we call it waste, but it's actually what you could call resource water, because inside that wastewater is fertilizer for agriculture. They're even creating bioplastics from wastewater. And as I mentioned before, generating renewable energy from wastewater. Biogas is able to be captured from wastewater to fuel buses, to fuel taxis and cars and other public transportation that run on renewable sources. So that biogas can also be exported back to the grid for households and things. So this is kind of saying that we can't view waste as waste anymore. Waste is actually a resource that needs to be recovered to grow the circular economy even further. And usually, unfortunately, this is more, it's becoming common, but it's not as mainstream as it should be. So typically, these projects around the world are at demonstration stages. There are some, very enlightened cities around the world, Stockholm, for instance, that already do this on a large scale, which provides their biogas for actual bus companies. But unfortunately, we need to kickstart the circular economy because many places around the world haven't even got these facilities up and running from numerous barriers. It could be technical, it could be educational awareness, it could be financial. And so we need to enhance the awareness of how can we turn our waste into resource. And then on the fifth one is restore. We need to restore our ecosystems and the services they provide. Ecosystem services provide us with fresh air, clean water, flood protection, carbon mitigation. And we need to start thinking about how to restore our natural environment in the circular economy. And one example that I'm showing here today is that, green infrastructure in cities is one of the key things of mitigating emissions while protecting biodiversity. At the same time, green infrastructure saves electricity, reduces carbon emissions. So it's in that whole circular economy thing. And one of the basic examples of green infrastructure is having green roofs that cool buildings while also providing habitat for wildlife. And so people sometimes say to me, well, what does this have to do with digitalization or open source examples? And I say, well, we need to monitor this green infrastructure. The green roofs can be monitored. How much air pollution is actually capturing? Is it really purifying the rainwater that enters the city's streets? How much rainwater is actually being collected and being stopped from flooding downstream users? So there's many different ways of digitalizing these types of hard infrastructure. So it's up to the imagination really as to how far you really want to go. So today, as Val mentioned, yes, I've authored a few of these books. Two of the ones that are probably more relevant today is Natural Resource Management, Circular Economy, which focuses on actual natural resources, wood, water, etc. And then developing the circular water economy is specifically on reducing, reusing, and recovering resources from wastewater. And I'd just like to end the presentation there, and hopefully the takeaway is not that I provide a digitalized solution to something, but opening up people's, understandings and minds to think, wow, this technology can actually be applied to this, or it could be applied to that. So I hope I've done my job on that today. And so thank you, Val, for this opportunity to spread the message almost. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Where to start? Robert, it goes without saying that we are very fond of your work and the many expertise that you bring to the table. And I do appreciate that you're joining us. It's very late for you, and I am aware of that. So it's very grateful here. A great thank you from us for you to join. So I think, Robert, you have hit the nail on the head here with the 5 R's. So reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, and restore. So the one question I would like to address here is very much up your street is, besides Stockholm, as you have mentioned here, can you perhaps share with us a company or another city that is doing an exemplary job in creating a climate resilient circular economy? And as a way to provide inspiration to the attendees, we have talked about circular economy from a sustainable development standpoint. We have talked about the digital role that it plays in the concept, but now from a climate resilience perspective. Share with us some examples that it could inspire people to do better, companies and cities and individuals as well.
I think personally, we're seeing a lot of technology coming out of, very tightly constrained spatial areas like Singapore, where they have very tightly spaced. Land is very tight, it's compressed, there's an urban density, where they're creating these Nexus systems where they're taking the wastewater, they're taking the food waste, they're combining it together to create 2 treatment plants. One is to treat sewage on one side, with the food waste being powering that sewage treatment plant, and then the energy created from the sewage treatment plant then going back to the waste, to the food processing plant. So it's kind of creating this symbiotic relationship, and we're seeing that quite often in Amsterdam and other cities, where trying to build infrastructure quite in close proximity to each other now. Trying to create almost decentralized systems that provide renewable energy in the neighborhood. When it comes to reducing, we see corporates are quite often it's the food and beverage companies that are very, very advanced in reducing their water consumption for alcoholic drinks and soft drinks, etc. So in the private sector, there's a lot of good examples from the beer, especially beer companies, because they have to rely on the agriculture producers, they have to rely on water, and they're also having to, under very high pressure from governments wanting to regulate the industry. You're seeing like Coca-Cola saying that like zero, what water they take out is put back into the groundwater, etc. So you're seeing that kind of things. And when it comes to restoring the natural environment, you're seeing cities really like San Francisco, you're seeing Berlin even, you're seeing Rotterdam, really, taking this water and, smart and blue and green roofs, and to managing the environment while also creating potable water supplies for or non-potable water supplies for buildings, to really recycle and reuse that water for flushing toilets, for showers or commercial applications. So you're seeing quite a lot of, there's no one location in this world where it's all happening at once. It's more piece by piece. So the food to energy, you're seeing that in South Australia and seeing that in places in England. But unfortunately, we're not at the whole stage where there's one location in this world that has done it all. So therefore, we need to keep pushing these best practices and lessons learned, trying to get other locations to really, take on board. And one day we might have 100% circular city that does this. But until then, we're needing to have more of these dialogues happening.
Yeah. Well, I very much look forward to that day when cities will be 100% operating on following the circular economy principles. Robert, just an addition here. So coming from the UN, she also mentioned that when we talk about reducing, also means totally eliminating the production and use of product. For example, here, Nilgün using I think an example that we can all relate to it, use of plastics. You know, I don't think I need to go on to talk about how bad it is for the oceans to have the amount of plastic waste that we have these days. So I think it also complementing your answer here. And before we move on, Robert, just wanted to clarify something that's coming from our audience here. Somebody's just asking here, and there's a clarification from you. Are you suggesting we use human waste as a fertilizer? So if you can just clarify this point for us, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, it's not specifically directly, but it is put into a treatment. It's going through all its processes to eventually become, the phosphorus is recovered, nitrogen is recovered to create a fertilizer, and then that is up against EPA standards, and Sweden has a certificate for this to make sure that the end product is fertilizer that's healthy for applications on agricultural land. In the wastewater industry, this is quite common. There's South Australia Water provides a fertilizer based from sewage that is delivered to agriculture producers. It's in Europe, it's in the United States, so it is a very quite a common thing to do, but it's not direct or anything. It's gone through many stages of processing. I just think that one thing I'd like to clarify from Nilgün is that, like, what I'm talking about is mainly from the water and wastewater, and these are quite standard concepts. So I understand from an industrial point of view or commercial side, what we're talking about with recovering, cutting out waste from our systems. But unfortunately in the water, we have waste, we have human waste, we have commercial waste. We can't cut waste out of the circular economy in the water sector. That's impossible, because otherwise we'll have no businesses, we'll have no farms, we'll have no nothing. So from my angle, I'm coming in from a very water related thing where waste is always present. There's always going to be food waste that needs to be disposed of, and it will be put into sewage treatment plants to generate renewable energy. There's always going to be wastewater from industrial processes. There's no way of creating industrial products without wastewater. So.
Okay, so Tanya, the question came from Tanya Ashton. I hope Robert has answered your question, and should that not be the case, please leave your details here with our team, and we can connect you with Robert afterwards, and you can clarify any other questions that you might have. Nilgün, from your perspective, is there an answer rebuttal? Is there something you'd like to add to what Robert has just said?
I understand. Thank you, Val. I understand where Robert is coming from and appreciate it very much. We work with companies in saving water and restoring ecosystem services, very much involved in industrial symbiosis. However, the main focus of circular economy is about sustainable consumption and production, and at the core is reducing material use, which will also ensure, for example, cutting out hazardous chemicals from production processes or products will make sure that the water that is coming out of production is also cleaner. The recovery operations, recycling, always requires energy. So, and I've shown you that the big portion, the huge amount of energy that the huge role the energy plays when it comes to greenhouse gases, therefore reducing the resilience of the whole planet and all the populations on it. So that is, water, of course, as a natural resource is important in production and consumption as well. So efficiency, resource efficiency, resource efficiency, resource efficiency.
very well understood, Nilgün. We appreciate you also coming here. Unfortunately, we still have tons of great speakers to come on board, so we cannot be too much behind the schedule. We are slightly behind, and I do apologize for that. So I would, however, now like to move on. So from New Zealand, we go all the way to Canada, very early morning as well for Canada. So I will now welcome our next speaker, Dr. Amani Alfarra. Dr. Amani Alfarra is a water officer at FAO, the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. She has more than 20 years of substantive expertise in water and natural resources management, mainly focused on river basin, transboundary river management. Dr. Amani has extensive experience in work with managerial and policy issues in the field of natural resources management at a local and national level. So we are very excited, Dr. Amani, to have you on board. So please, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Greeting again from Canada. I am working at the World Food Organization. Originally, my work is based in Rome, but just like the time now I'm in Canada. So I am looking to the circular economy from the perspective of food and agriculture, and of course from the lenses of water that is used for food and agriculture. So it's the idea how and why we move from linear economy to the circular economy. So from take, make, dispose model to the model where we try to utilize every resources and we try to recycle each resources. So one of the most famous circular economy is the EU economy, where they try to show how and where we can try to recycle and reduce resources. And to make the life for the resources is longer, and focusing on the the main three principles of circular economy, which minimize of waste and pollution, extension of the useful life of a production and material, where we create a loop where we can recycle and reuse, regeneration of natural resources. As my earlier presenter said, maybe the fertilizer inside the wastewater, which I will be coming to that again. So the circular economy, it's why we are thinking from a green perspective on the circular economy, because it is resources efficiency, using resources more efficient for a greener and more competitive economy, eco-innovation, enabling a green growth and the transition towards more circular economy. We need at the beginning always the raw material. To ensure use raw material does not deplete the plant resources and the production. We need also to promote a greener production and support for greener companies and organization. For consumption, we need to provide a transparent information to consumer to enable them to make greener choices. Why we are doing that? It's just to fight climate change and to be able to achieve the SDGs. So in FAO, we try to do that in the focus of FAO on three lenses, which is water, energy, food nexus, the use of non-conventional water resources such as treated wastewater uses, and one water, one health approach, which is a white paper also is forthcoming for FAO. What there is inside the water food nexus is we are trying to look for the balances on the different resources, users and goals, where we are looking for the point of interaction and how we can emphasize on these interactions. So if you look for the food production as defined by FAO, So we see that there are different types of food production from the sea to the upper catchment, which is there is a livestock, there is a crop production, there is the forestry, the aquaculture. So we are looking, the red lines here are more the consumption and the pollution, or let's say the negative side of the equation, while we are trying to build on the green lines, which is the reuse of fertilizer, fish feeds. It can be like when you put the aquaculture, you can use this water as a fertilized water in the agriculture. So for the non-conventional water as an example, so if we look for the recyclable recycling, there are different types of non-conventional water, including rain harvesting, or the recycle of return flow system, where you collect the drainage in the end of the farm field, and which is having some fertilizer inside it remaining and some chemicals, so you reuse it, and by that you are reducing the amount of refertilizing. Or the reuse of wastewater, treated wastewater. And in the reuse of a treated wastewater, we have to take in consideration that there is sometimes there is a salinity which can impacting the agricultural production. So the more increasing in the salinity, the field crops will be less. But calculating the fertilizer and the nitrate inside the treated wastewater is not difficult. It can be done by simple equations. And this can help in calculating the fertilizer where you can add it. It's not necessarily to go to a full processing to extract the fertilizer from the water or the treated wastewater, because if you plan to use this treated wastewater for agriculture, then you can price that water. So it helps for pricing the water. So you add the value to the water, so that make the farmers think, I'm paying the fertilizer 2 times. So he doesn't need to buy fertilizer, and he can save by using the treated fertilizer, treated wastewater. And here we need to think of how farmers think. They need to think of a profit. So we need to convince them. Always it's the trigger, how you make the other partner or the stakeholder have a buy-in in what you are telling them. So this is an example of how you calculate, was in Jordan for a tomato field trip, for a tomato inside the treated wastewater. So I will give a solid example of the treated wastewater in Jordan, where they have a huge, or maybe the biggest planet of a treated wastewater in the Middle East. So they have a Samra treated wastewater. The wastewater, it have many resources can be reused. So if we think about the solid waste, where you can ferment it and you create biogas, and this biogas will be used for running the plant or for something else. So here in Kharbat al-Samra, they are using this biogas, 80% of this biogas to run, the biogas running the Samra by capacity 80%. At the same time, now the solid waste is not dangerous to be used in the field because it's already fermented. So now it can be sold as a fertilized soil and can be sold outside. So it's another resources. And the treated wastewater is going to be as effluent, which is collected in Jordan in a dam, and it's distributed in the King Talal Dam for the farm in the Jordan Valley, which is the food basket of the Jordan for vegetables, and to be exported even to Europe. So they manage it to be passing the Euro gap. So it's the most important, how you train the farmer, how you train the people to use every resources. So from this wastewater, we managed to have the biogas, the fertilized soil, and the reuse of a treated wastewater. So circular economy here, You see it in the service of agriculture. So we managed to have a nitrate recovery, fostering local economy and supply chains, especially to save in electricity. So why phosphorus matter and concentration in this country, taken in consideration, these also countries which suffering from water scarcity. To conclude, we can say that integration circular economy in sanitation, it need more like how we can enforce it. So maybe we need to have a policy, bylaws, incentives that foster the agricultural sector to have them motivated to use it. We need to develop a coherence between Paris Agreement and national implementation of circular sanitation economy. We need to think how we can enable a policy environment in these local communities and at the national levels. Indeed, circular economy, it requires a multidisciplinary engagement. So we need the government, the policy, the stakeholders from industry, local farmers, local producer, or international. Create a market with incentives for where circular economy engage. So the greener, the better. Promote good practices. Indeed, FAO was working on the treated wastewater for a quite long time now, and there was a video that I can share with, and it is was produced with UN Water for their UN Water, I think 2017, on the reuse of a treated wastewater. So this video show how usually was also, as Robert said earlier, that we used to use the water and dispose it. So there is no recycle in it. That was the normal practices globally. Then when we start to think of the reuse, we can build more sustainable and resilient societies, cities, which they can provide more food, more sustainable for resilient to climate change, less waste. And by this, I like to conclude.
Dr. Amani, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have your expertise here, the UN expertise, and especially with relation to water and food resources. So I have a question here for you from the audience, and the question is the following. Fresh water, food security, and nutrition they are clearly a priority in developed nations. But the question here now is, are they aware, are these highly advanced countries aware, really conscious of how avoiding food waste through responsible consumption, are they aware that how it impacts the developing nations? And we usually focus on the citizen side, but how can restaurants, supermarkets, and big food industry, how can they help? How can policies here apply to responsible industrial production of food and water?
Thank you so much for this question. Of course, developed countries are supporting globally other developing countries through different initiatives globally. So we have globally worked together by different initiatives, either like South-South cooperation or hand in hand. So these countries work hand in hand with other countries to take them to the next level or to transfer knowledge and practices, how they can cover the gap between these two countries, what we can do together. So yes, especially at FAO, we work hand in hand with other countries to move a step ahead to reach more climate resilient and to achieve the SDGs, because this is our focus. It's not like only developed country will be achieving the SDGs, but we are working with others closely to achieve the SDGs? I hope I answered.
Yes, absolutely have. And I think if you allow me, just a complementary question to that is, it's pretty much in terms of fiscal policy approaches. I mean, a lot of these nations don't have the monetary incentives that they might need for create a green economy. So in terms of fiscal policy approaches and instruments, they are vital to help the developing nations. Can you elaborate very briefly on what is important?
Sorry, can you repeat exactly what is important from what aspect?
Yeah, so for anyone looking here for a very special or exemplary cases of fiscal incentives that are helping to drive a sustainable green economy. So for countries that have very limited budgets, especially public administration budgets, can you cite one example of a fiscal policy or a fiscal incentive that is helping nations to apply circular economy principles into their sustainability vision?
Okay, if you look to the Jordan case study, maybe because I work a lot in that area in that time, so I'm pretty aware. So what they are doing is revisiting the bylaws, and they are trying, so this Khirbat Samra, because it saves that amount of energy, they produce that good quality of treated wastewater, which is used for agriculture sector, and the biogas is utilized for the running of the energy. They are duplicating inside Jordan this case, this particular case. So the first one, which is a Samra, was upgraded with international money. The second one is done by their own money so far. And that is incentive because they saw how it worked for them. In the same time, the farmer, when they work with the farmer and they educate the farmer about the treated wastewater and the enrichment of the fertilizer, which by training the farmer, they could save 40 to 50% based on the crop. On the buying fertilizer, which is very expensive, that was incentive for the farmer to use the treated wastewater versus the fresh water in agriculture, because they start to utilize the amount of fertilizer for their crop, and that they can save. So the incentive sometimes is not you educate them what inside this and what is not.
Okay, so it comes down to education, and education, correct?
It's education, revisiting the bylaws to see where you can develop. It's engagement of a stakeholder, so you have to sit on the table, different stakeholders. So it's not anymore like I'm the government, I give this and you have to do that. If you don't have a buy-in from the stakeholders, they will not be engaged, and they will not adapt to the new policy or a new, like even if you incentivize it, like by government to say will be cheaper, but if they are not engaged, you will not have a buy-in. So you have not only education, but also multidisciplinary, because it's based on multidisciplinary approach. So you have to have the stakeholder negotiation, sitting in the table, different level. You should have bylaw visiting, how you can reach a policy which based on the indices, and how you can go to less emission, and by reusing, recycling, what sector you need to focus, and all of this. So it's a package together. You cannot say one versus another.
Yeah, very nice. I think it all wraps up into what Jared talked about before, is the open culture, is the idea that we should all be working together, the public administrations, private businesses, citizens, research institutions, we should all be working together for a common goal here. Dr. Amani, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Now, from Canada to the Netherlands, we now will bring you a little bit of a European view, or a little bit beyond that. I am beyond excitement to have our next speaker with us, Andrea Orsag. It's a very enthusiastic, very well knowledgeable presenter and keynote speaker. So Andrea will be talking about a lot of different things here, but before we go into that, let me introduce Andrea. So Andrea is a sustainability and circular economy evangelist, and you will easily notice that when she starts talking. She's the co-founder at Mission C, a strategy advisory company based in Amsterdam, on a mission to accelerate the transition to circular economy on a global scale. Andrea is a consultant with over 10 years of experience, combined risk management, strategy and change management cross industry, both for the commercial sector and non-for-profit organizations internationally. Andrea, I hope I have made it justice to your introduction, and please, very warm welcome for you here.
Many thanks, Lot. Fantastic.
Yes, we
Hi,
can.
good afternoon, everyone. Great to be here. And just to make it very clear, we're indeed a strategy advisory firm based here in Amsterdam. So I'm very happy we're jumping from Canada and Japan, New Zealand, US, now also to Europe. And our goal is to really help companies realize all those beautiful benefits of circular economy and help them to navigate how to embed it into the strategy, adjust the business models. And one of my favorite things is definitely the stakeholder engagement. So we were having a lot of different presentations explaining what is circular economy, wonderful examples from all the different resources, such as like water, looking at agriculture, looking at electronics and so on, smart cities. And I was asked to provide a proof that circular economy also makes a business sense. So that's going to be my focus here today. All of you have seen that. We don't really deep dive into that. Right now, the system is completely broken, and this is indeed what's causing all those greenhouse gas emissions that are creating the climate change, super unpredictable weather patterns. However, this is also creating a lot of risk. So we really want to move to circular economy, but we're not there yet. In fact, at the beginning of this year, during the World Economic Forum, the Circularity Gap Report 2020 has been launched, and on average, the world is only 9% circular. So there's quite a lot of space for improvement and a lot of opportunities to be found, and a big gap to be filled. Of course, 9% is pretty much an average number here. If we are looking into the Norway, they had a specific country scan, and the figure is 2.4%. Whereas on the right side, they did also scan for the Netherlands, and the Netherlands is 24.5% circular. So there is hope for all of us, and there's definitely a way to improve this figure and reach higher. Talking about risk management and strategy. So as mentioned, it's not only about the CO2 emissions, it's about, from the business perspective and also resilience and security perspective, a huge risk being dependent on the resources that are continuously becoming more and more scarce, more and more expensive, unpredictable. COVID-19 and the fact the majority of the world has been on a lockdown was a perfect example. It was difficult to get to those resources, which was disrupting all the different operations, all the plants were just lost in there. Hence, it really revealed our big dependency on the supply chains. So this is a huge risk right here. Resources are limited and hence more scarce. On the other hand, just treating everything as a single use and not really prolonging the life cycle and life of our products, we're creating a huge waste pollution, whether we're talking about pollution of the landfills, air pollution, or water pollution. And again, I'm very happy that Robert and also the others were touching the topic of such a very needed resource without which we don't have life on our beautiful planet Earth, such as water. So this is another risk. Many people also very often don't realize that in order to get rid of the waste, companies have to pay quite a lot of money for this disposal. And also, it's not only a waste of resources and all the beautiful value, but it's actually also a waste of a lot of money. A lot of value goes in there. I'd like to use an example. So there's this like beautiful company creating a modular phone called Fairphone. And based on their research, actually 1 ton of mobile phones, generally speaking, has 100 times more gold than in the resource or itself. Just let that sink for a little while. So there is already this like great resource. Everyone wants gold that we can utilize for so many products. And instead of getting it out of what we already have, old mobile phones, we throw them away and we go and dig for new gold. And there is 100 times more gold in the old product itself. So on the top of that, we have, of course, certain market forces. So all of you are probably aware that there is a lot of regulation coming, strengthening from the Paris Agreement through the SDG goals, through the goals on the European Commission level. I will get to that a little bit later. And we also see that seeing what is happening, I mean, climate change is directly linked indeed to our survival, to biodiversity, to the health. There is a growing population of conscious consumers and also companies that are realizing that if they can figure out how to lower their dependency on those limited resources, how they can prevent not being compliant with the regulations, and also how to eliminate the waste pollution, they will be actually able to create a better future for themselves, profit-wise, but also for our people and our planet. I, however, would still like to go back to this old picture where we're talking about what are all the different business models. And I've been hearing today a lot about 5 Rs and also how we can and have to use resources better. I would like to add that it all starts already at the design phase. In order to have products that we're able to disassemble and reuse, we need to design them in a way that it's possible to get those resources out of them. So we need to design way better, smarter, and we also need to think about modularity, so it's way easier to upgrade those products. We need to think about great quality, hence longevity as well, so they are easily reshared as well, because it's not only about creating better products, but it's also about changing the way we're utilizing those products. So one of the business models of circular economy would be having access instead of ownership to the products. All right, so talking about how our company is doing, I think it's going to be no surprise for anyone if I just start with Philips, a healthcare company, absolute leader in the sector. And I'm very happy to share with you that last week they updated also their targets when it comes to circular economy. And Philips actually made a bold decision and included as one of few companies so far also a circular economy goal directly into their strategy. And right now they are keen to have 25% of their revenues coming from circular products, services, and solutions by year 2025. So they have dated this goal because before their goal was to have by year 2020, so by the end of this year, 15% coming from circularity products, services, and solutions. And yeah, based on their annual reports, it's very clear that they're on a really good track because last year they were able to reach already 13%. Keep in mind, 15 is the goal for this year. And now the interesting part, looking at what does that mean in the revenue. Last year, with circular economy products and services, they were able to earn more than 2.5 billion euros. So this is really a nice proof that it can be possible. And talking about the technology, so Philips decided also to include a couple of other goals within the year 2025. And that's, for instance, the fact that they would like to focus on dematerialization. They would like to offer indeed access to services instead of the ownership, do upgrades, focus on refurbishing their CT scans or MRI scans or conventional X-rays as well, and take in all those devices. And again, in order to be able to do that, it's very important to be very clear and know what is in those products so they can be properly refurbished and reused. All of you are probably familiar with a simple thought that the end of product's life, meaning we don't need it anymore, doesn't mean that this is the, end of product's use is not the end of product's life. So the fact that we don't use it anymore doesn't mean nobody else can't use it anymore either. There are still ways how we can really beautifully utilize all those valuable resources that are in our products. I also decided to talk a little bit about how we can indeed create products not necessary from our virgin resources. And over here, I find the Swiss company Freytag a really great example, because they're the ones creating all the different accessories, backpacks, that would be one of their famous products, and all the different bags and little tiny pouches out of old truck tarps. And looking at what they were able to save in terms of resources last year, so on annual basis, it's more than 800 tons of old truck tarps. Then it's over 150,000 car seat belts and 18,000 bicycle inner tubes. So this is really a perfect example of a product that is not using virgin materials. And because they're using something that's already out there, they're creating all those unique products. Every single one is different. And on top of that, they're even waterproof. And I think in order proving that a business model really has a strong potential is the fact that they are earning money with this business model. People really want unique products that are of good quality, unique design, and that they really are built to last. They're offering also repairs. So that would be an example of Freytag. And we were talking about all the different industries, and I'm very happy that I can share also a little bit about apparel industry or fashion industry. So the waste that's being created in the fashion industry is currently absolutely huge. Every single second right now, an equivalent of a truck full of clothes either burns or goes to the landfills. And also, we're not talking only about waste in terms of resources, but this can be even financially translated into over $400 billion every single year. And that's the figure by the circular economy think tank, Ellen MacArthur Foundation. Yeah, so talking about fashion industry and the waste it's creating on global basis, and it's responsible for approximately 10% of all the greenhouse gas emissions, it's becoming more and more interesting to explore all the different business models, how people can still dress trendily, but avoid fast fashion, which is cheaply produced, quickly pushed into the retail stores, and it's becoming waste very quickly, as we got a chance to see. So one of the interesting business models is becoming rental. And of course, rental has been here already in the past, especially when we're talking about unique items. For instance, somebody's going for someone's wedding and they really want something special. However, also a rental for day wear is becoming increasingly more and more interesting and also important. You probably heard of one of the most famous company in that industry. That would be Rent the Runway, that last year, based on the investments into their company, reached the unicorn status, meaning it reached 1 billion valuation. Of course, rental can be done as a business model in many different ways. I would like to also point out that there are business models that are very specifically focusing on sustainable fabrics, sustainable items, so sustainable clothes. One of those being, for instance, Balanta, that launched just quite recently. And the goal is to really rent, enjoy this beautiful clothes that you can choose, return them, and that way the same item can be utilized by way more people within the subscription. At the same time, it can be fairly flexible, so you can decide on the events that you're having planned, the budgets that you're having planned, and also your mood. It's actually expected that a rental market will reach 1.9 billion globally by year 2023 every single year. So definitely a huge space to explore as well. Also, talking about industry, it might be a good idea just to add a couple of companies that are becoming a perfect proof that we can do that with the help of technology, and technology really can help us to push the boundaries in circular economy even further. One of such companies is the Dutch Circularize. And Circularize is an open source protocol and decentralized network to bring radical transparency into the supply chain. They just recently got also a really big investment from the European Commission, and that's definitely the way to go. Also, not going very far from the Netherlands, there is this beautiful market-to-market platform called Cirkel. It's from Czech Republic, and they're connecting people and companies with waste, with people and companies that could really utilize this waste as a resource. So eliminating waste as such, but really creating something that can be a perfect secondary resource for somebody else. And I would like to also mention Sensowave, that is from Slovakia. And Sensowave is a smart enterprise-grade waste management for cities and also businesses, utilizing IoT, data management, and smart sensors. So the three main solutions that they're offering is asset management, waste monitoring, and also route planning of those wastes. And waste collection costs can be brought down by 30% by utilizing this solution. And also when it comes to CO2 emissions in the cities, they can go down up to 60%. So it definitely sounds like a perfect way to implement if we want to reach the smart cities. I'm very happy that I think it was Robert who also mentioned that Amsterdam is definitely on the way to becoming one of the smart cities. And the reason behind that is also that European Commission has goals, and circular economy action plan is already in place as a part of the European Green Deal. And you probably also caught last week's big news where the European Commission, represented by its president Ursula von der Leyen, made her very first State of the Union address, and she also included into this proposal to increase the 2030 emissions reduction to at least 55%. It's important to know that before that figure was 40%. And European Commission is also backed by over 150 large CEOs of the large companies within the European Commission. And also, there are quite some notes and figures mentioned here why circular economy is important and how this also relates to renewable energy. I would say it's very obvious that everyone is very keen to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and we know that the renewable energy can cater for approximately 55% of those emissions. However, the big question is, what do we do with the remaining half? And that's exactly where the circular economy comes in handy, because quite a big part of those emissions is directly linked to extraction of those resources and waste creation as well. Yeah, so from the European Commission level, we can go to national level, again mentioning Netherlands as a really nice example here. So according to the circularity gap report done on a national level, we're right now 24.5% circular. The goal is to become 50% circular by year 2030. So it's exactly year 2030 aligned to Paris Agreement, to the SDGs. And then ideally 100% circular by year 2050. And when it comes to Amsterdam, Amsterdam as a city, greetings from Amsterdam, everyone, has the same goals. Amsterdam really aims to be a circular city, 100% circular by year 2050, and aiming to become 50% circular by year 2030. And already right now, at the beginning of the year, Amsterdam published a circular economy strategy, and the next 5 years will be very closely monitoring all the different waste and especially focusing on 4 main areas, including the food, as been mentioned in so many presentations today. Yeah, the big question is always, can we change? I think it really makes sense, and there are so many reports proving that already. I would just like to mention that according to the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, the research they have done, 97% of the respondents indicated that the circular economy is really the driver of their innovation, and it's helping them to become also more competitive. And 51% of all those companies, and we're really talking about all the big ones, including Adidas, IKEA, and so on, already added that circular economy is helping them to add to company profits. So can we change? Well, it seems like we as human beings sometimes need a big push. However, I really strongly believe that this pandemic was a great example that it can be done if there is urgency and we understand that we have to change. As we were able to all switch into online conferences. So for instance, right now, right here, there are people literally from all over the world, and we're able to connect together and join this conference together. So I would just conclude. I definitely strongly believe circular economy is a perfect strategy to future-proof your business. Definitely a great way how to mitigate the risks, how to adapt to all the beautiful opportunities. World is only 9% circular so far, so let's be all part of the change. We're talking here about a systemic change, but companies are indeed a big part of that, and we need to bring also consumers to be a part of that, because they're in the end a part of the system. So we need to focus on building the infrastructure that everyone will be able to utilize in the most efficient way. Thank you.
Very nice, Andrea. It has been an absolutely pleasure. I have a question for you from one of our closest community members. I will, however, if that's okay with you, send you the question by email, just because we are half an hour behind and we would love to close this event by 5 o'clock. So if that's
Sure.
okay with you, could I please just send the question to you by email?
Absolutely. Well, feel free to do so.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for coming in. It was an absolute pleasure. Bye.
Bye.
So we are now moving on to the last leg of our event today. So it's the use case now. We have three very short presentations. This is a 10-minute each, which means we will do our best to close the event by 5 o'clock. So I do appreciate that you guys stay a little bit longer, please, so you can hear all about this use cases and how FIWARE technology is helping to create the circular economy in a very practical way. So without any further ado, I will now introduce you to our next speaker, Maxime Mularz, Hostabee founder. After 15 years as a maths teacher and university lecturer, Maxime created his first innovative enterprise just 4 years ago, Hostabee, which is dedicated to the design and implementation of smart solutions for the environment and sustainable development in the context of moving towards the green economy. So Maxime, we are all very intrigued to hear what Hostabee has got to do with circular economy. So the stage is yours.
Okay, thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Maxime, founder of Hostabee, a French company developing technology to support transition towards a sustainable economy. Hostabee is currently active in 3 domains: in environment management and biodiversity protection, in the water and irrigation management, and last but not least, quite correlated to the 2 precedent activities in food life cycle management. Since the creation of Hostabee in 2015, our solutions are powered by FIWARE technology. So today I'm very happy to participate in this webinar to share some hands-on experience about the way we contribute to address one of the most important goals regarding sustainable consumption, the food eaten by our kids. A significant part of the challenges to change the habits and to improve the quality of the food and the behavior is located in the school restaurants, especially in France, where almost 70% of the kids used to eat in school restaurants. So to start, some words about the general approach, which is based on data. first as a quantitative information to engage the stakeholders and to prioritize the actions. Then, in more classical approach, to evaluate the gap from the as-is situation towards the to-be situation. To support the tactical and operation decisions. And finally, to measure the impact of this process of continuous improvement. And in our case, it's really a matter of education of the kids and also of information of their parents. And now, from a technical point of view, here are some examples of the key information that we have to collect, usually coming from various existing systems. Of course, we have to collect information about the menus, and when available, the most detailed information about the dishes compositions. And on the other hand, we need to know the frequentation of the restaurants associated with general profiles of the public, especially the age category. So Hostabee provides specific hardware to get the data from the waste collectors, basically connected scales that are integrated to the existing infrastructure. And all of this data are used to monitor the activity of the restaurants and continuously improve the adequation between the menu proposed by the restaurants and the expectation of the kids and their parents, following a strategy of responsible and sustainable consumption. These data are also used by Hostabee to gamify the challenge of changing the eating habits. And again, the role of the education services is fundamental, and these people must be involved in the design of the way to communicate and leverage leverage the use of real-time consumption. So, as usual, for this solution, Hostabee is using the FIWARE architecture. That means FIWARE enablers to implement the virtualization of the assets and the definition of the digital twins of the entities involved in the school restaurants activities. Then to use all of these standard enablers, allows Hostabee to focus on the very important part of the information is the definition of the data models. So in this case, we use references from kima.org, and of course we use the smart data models supported by the FIWARE community. And the good news for us is that we have already got some success with this solution, especially in the well-known city in Saint-Quentin, city of Saint-Quentin in France. A few months ago, we won the public tender of this city to support their digital transformation in 14 local school restaurants. So thanks to the interoperability by design of the Power by FIWARE approach, our solution is really cost effective and evolutive, and interoperability provides competitive advantages regarding the integration with the existing infrastructure. So, for instance, in Saint-Quentin, the city platform is based on FIWARE using the stereo context broker provided by another French company called EGM, which is a feature in the last white paper, FIWARE light paper. As the Hostabee solution is fully using NGI-SIAD APIs, it is really plug and play, and the integration has been reduced to 0. And it's really important here to note that the city of Saint-Quentin got the support of the European fundings to implement our innovative solution and the education action to change the eating habits. So in the name of Hostabee, I also want to thank our friends from the local FIWARE Digital Innovation Hub, managed by the association Faubourg Numérique, not only for the technical advice and expertise, but also for the business development and networking perspective. So now we hope that we will soon have the opportunity to publish this new solution on the FIWARE marketplace to reach a new stage in our mission toward a sustainable economy. So thank you. Don't hesitate to contact me to go further. And that's.
Thank you, Maxime, and most importantly, thank you for staying within the 10 minutes time. Very much appreciated. Just for the attendees still with us, we will be now doing 3 presentations in a row. So I will move on now. Thank you, Maxime. I will move on to our next presentation. I'm very excited to have with us Dario Pellegrino, a researcher at engineering from Italy. So Dario, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Val, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm very glad to be here today to talk to you about a circular economy approach for smart waste management, implemented in the context of the Waste for Think research project, and how FIWARE technologies have helped us to build an advanced and innovative waste management system. So I'd like to start this presentation with some data about the municipal waste context. 500 kilo are the waste generated by each person in Europe per year, and only less than half of them are recycled. The rest is still sent to landfills and incinerators. This means that 80 million tons of recyclable material are thrown away annually. We can easily realize that these are really impressive numbers that can no longer be sustained from an environmental, social, and economic point of view. This is what we call side effects of the linear economy, based on the production of a good, its consumption, and subsequent waste disposal. Hence, the need to strongly impose a model of circular waste economy, which goes beyond the concept of the end of life of the resource, and consider waste no longer as waste, but as a resource to be reintroduced into the economic circuits. This is why Waste for Think is born, a European research project aimed to move forward the traditional waste management system towards the circular economy principle. All this thanks to the implementation of 20 different eco-innovative solutions that cover all the waste value chain. This solution has been validated on 4 different pilot cities with different demographic and geographical characteristics, and also different pre-existing municipal regulation in the waste management. But exactly what I mean with the eco-innovative solution. I'm talking about IT tools to support the daily operation and the long-term planning, apps for citizens to promote their empowerment and engagement, the valorization of particular waste as food waste or waste with high environmental impact, such as nappies, for the production of biomass products in a circular economy concept, educational material based on innovative teaching methods and serious game, tools for citizens aimed at creating a new solution, and mechanisms to trigger behavioral changes based on economic incentive or social actions. So, an advanced waste management system has a multidisciplinary approach to the service that beyond the traditional waste management also takes into account environmental, social, technological, and economic factors involved in the waste value chain. How did FIWARE help us in this project? FIWARE technologies are able to respond to the waste management sector's demand for digitalization. And now, providing a standard and an easy way to develop or integrate smart waste management solutions. Moreover, open APIs and open standards also facilitate the cross-data domain, the data-driven innovation. So with FIWARE, we have built a platform able to handle heterogeneous waste context information, providing functionalities for data collection, processing, analysis, and data retrieval. In particular, this platform has been implemented with an holistic data management approach, based on a specific methodology developed and adopted in the Waste for Think project, the waste methodology, which includes not only waste data, but also environmental, social, technological, and economic data in order to compare the sustainability levels of waste management services and monitor actions taken. Hence, we have defined the waste data model with the aim to cover this data involved in each waste management core process. What we have done during the project is a study, a data modeling process, in order to design a flexible data model able to cover all the peculiarities of heterogeneous waste management system in different countries. All this has been done by defining entities and relationships that characterize this kind of advanced waste management system. The data model is based on FIWARE and GSI standard, and a part of this data model, in particular those that characterize waste containers, have been published in the FIWARE catalog as a waste model. Around the waste data model, we have implemented the Waste for Think data management platform by using different FIWARE generic enablers, such as the Orion Context Broker or the FIWARE security components, and also leveraging on the capabilities of the FIWARE Lab cloud infrastructure. This platform, as I just said, provides functionalities to handle different data coming from different sources, from sensors, from control scheme of the treatment plants, from the web, from serious game, learning material, and other applications developed during the project. But it also provides functionality to process and analyze this data, and triggering predefined action such as alerts or anomalies. It will provide functionality to store this data as historical data or open data. So as you can see, FIWARE generic enabler have given us a great support to build this platform. Now, to better understand how we have used the Waste for Think platform, I will show you two typical scenarios. This one related to the waste collection, where we have the bins equipped with sensor to check the filling levels, and a card reader for the user identification and the opening of the bin. We have sensors on the vehicle for the weight of the waste delivered, an RFID reader system for the identification of the bin, a video camera to verify the level of impurities of the waste, and a GPS system to trace the route of the vehicle. All this information is sent in real time through a track app to the Waste 14 platform in order to be used, for example, in the municipality dashboard to monitor the waste collection or specific KPIs. Another scenario is the learning analytics, where, for instance, a mobile game retrieves information from the platform and at the same time sends game statistic data to the platform, which through analytics tools, machine learning model, can process this data in order to create a specific KPI to verify, for example, the social impact or the type of citizen involvement. Finally, let me close my presentation with a brief introduction of an upcoming research project also based on circular economy approach where ENGIE is involved. The project is Food Routes. It will start in November. It will be coordinated by University of Deusto. Food Routes has been built on the basis of three pillars of food sovereignty: democracy, health and culture, and empowerment, with the aim to address food waste prevention challenge via circular economy as a model from which to generate, implement, and replicate technical and organizational solutions in different agri-food value chains at different scales. In particular, ENGIE will lead the activities for the food routes digitalization, leveraging on FIWARE technologies, in order to build an interoperability module and a data management platform. We will also integrate a FIWARE compliant DLT blockchain platform, and we are also involved in the activities to develop the food routes suite, which includes ICT operation, web and mobile apps, and blockchain smart contracts. So I think that's all. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Dario, and very nicely all tightened together here, all the things we have discussed so far, and now having the use cases showing on a very practical level, on a first-hand level, how FIWARE technology can really make the circular economy a real concept. So for our last use case, so without any further ado, I will now introduce you to our next speaker. Ana Bugueiro is a project manager and animal science researcher at Sensowave, where she specializes in animal welfare. Sensowave is a startup that creates innovative solutions based on IoT for farm industries. So Ana is going to be talking to us about extensive farming. Ana, you have 10 minutes. Please enlighten us on all you have to say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for inviting me here to speak about and for the assistance too. And I'm very happy to present our use case in monitoring cattle welfare directly to the consumer table and the benefits for the sustainable markets. In this use case, we are powered by FIWARE technology, and we are very happy to collaborate between Digital Animals, Sensowave, that are the companies I'm working for, and the project with Cattle Chain. So a bit to put in the introduction of how circular economy affects in the farming. Let's say well, farms are intensive farms are in this problematic of the greenhouses, increment of greenhouse house gases, and what we have to do is either a reduction of animal source food or either better needed of biomass harvested from land and the natural bodies. So in this purpose is the Green Deal plan by the European Union, where we have a food loss and waste prevention and under sustainable food production and food processing and distribution, we get a sustainable consumption that is related to educate the sustainable farming. Also, the only aim, we have to get also the environmental, economical, and social. So at the end is getting the farm sustainable. So what is a sustainable farming? It's a farm that impacts on all the environmental, economic, and social systems, but it has many challenges about that, because of course in a farm you have many challenges of how to build it. Like, for example, in an extensive farm you're going to have more manure, heat stress, parasites, many respiratory diseases in the animals. We are talking about extensive so cattle that live outside of a house or something. They live completely in the pasture. So also you have a climate dependence. And a part of this farms doesn't have barren housing conditions or high production levels or profound mechanization. So in this, for this and for many other kind of farms, this use case is very applicable, that we have this kind of farm. So there is a good study of Hannah Van Santen that is from the University of Wageningen, and the application of circular economy in farms, because it's not only promoting the efficient and sustainable farm, also we need to convert all the arable land and the grassland, so they pass to the animal to come that give back to the environment the manure to keep the produce and use to maintain the soil fertility, etc. So in a let's say in a good production performance, the contribution to the circular food system is, while we are consuming the arable feeds and etc., we at the same moment introducing our nutrients are recycled. So this is a nice perspective. And in this perspective is what our project that we are together with FIWARE, Cattle Chain, that is a project that we introduce the monitoring and management and decision making on animal welfare in promoting IoT devices through a trustable open source availability that is through blockchain to the farmers to until the consumer. So at the end, what we fit in this project is all this any kind of dairy cattle or beef cattle farm can monitor their welfare continuously and be certified on a blockchain platform. This is very interesting in this use case that I'm presenting, because it's a tool that we need for this farmer to use and implement their solutions. Okay, so here is our scenario. It's in the Sierra of Madrid, in Guadarrama. The draw is that we have some oxys on all cycle life grazing, and the feedlot phase is control, long life chain, and we have, this is very important when you want to build a sustainable farm, a worried farmer. So at the end, what we get is a high quality sustainable product. So the farm was perfect, because we are monitoring also the animals. We are having, with the technology that we are providing through the project, we are having all interconnected. So it's not only that the sustainable product is high quality, it's also that we could test it and everything. But the problem here arises is the COVID times now. What we don't have in this farm is a supplier, and only restaurant supplier. So he was aware of not sell, that couldn't sell their products during the campaign. So what we are providing extra in collaboration with another project is to provide the direct selling platform. So the technological solution is about we are promoting IoT devices. That is, we have location, and we have also control the slaughter weight and the detection of health problems through a automatic scale that we can see here. Explain a bit the data that we can get to another much more data. We, for example, here see an example of an ox and the water and the weight that is gaining every day. So if the system detects any problem in the times that he is going to the water, it's gonna get an alarm for the farmer. Also, the technological solution in this, after this data is developed, we get also weather information plus satellite information. And this is powered by FIWARE technology that we get the blockchain into. So we get information from many sources coming to the same system, and is further reliable of our product and for a consumer reachability. So at the end, what we get in the consumer is a QR that you can try. That is gonna give you some information about how the animals are winning and are breeding and where they live, etc. And it's all data connected to the thing. So in this direct selling, what we also provide is not only the information from the consumer that he's gonna get through the website, also that, for example, we're gonna do a service that this farmer gonna sell in Madrid directly. The cows are there where you see it through a blockchain guaranteed. So the achievements of the use case at the end is provide a circular food system with many records from the animals, from location, from movements, from waiting records, that all the animals are monitored, and the standard, we use a standard data model also provide with FIWARE, that we get a consumer interaction at the end, and the consumer demands what it consumes, and the consuming is more logical at the end into a big city. For
Anna, I'm really sorry to stop you. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you, but the slide is not coming, and nothing else. Yeah, here you can see the event. So many thanks.
Thank you, Anna. It's actually you in that picture, is it not?
Yeah, it's me. Yes.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sorry to cut you short, but really need to stay within the time now. So now, first of all, I want to thank each one of you who stayed with us despite our 40 minutes, half an hour, pretty much, half an hour as of now, half an hour delay. I appreciate it. I will now move on to the closing remarks. So I'm very excited to welcome on board here now our CEO, Ulrich Ahle, who will be introducing the closing remarks, tying it all together and giving you some takeaways, things to think about afterwards. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Val, first of all, Val, thank you very much for doing this excellent moderation and stepping in for the original planned moderator. So really a great job. Thank you for all of you who stayed half an hour longer. And for me, it was an impressive list of speakers, and it was made really clear that circular economy and the concepts behind it need more focus and have a large potential for us in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And for me, very impressive it was when Robert explained the 5 R's, and also in some other speeches, it was made clear that recycling is not our main goal. We need to go more and more into reuse and refurbishing of products, and that here the potential, the real potential is in this topic. And based on what we heard at the beginning from Amani, circular economy is based on three main principles, and I would like to leave you now with this, to rephrase it: minimizing waste and pollution, extending the use of life of products and materials, and third and finally, regenerating natural systems. And the three final presentations make clear how digital platforms, how digital solutions can support achieving these approaches. And it was very impressive for me to see what Philips is doing. That's really a benchmark in industry, in building a business model based on circular economy. And let's drive this industry forward into this direction using open source technology. Thank you very much for your participation, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Ulrich. It's a pleasure to have you with us. So once again, a very nicely done, I think, to all the speakers, all the attendees here with us. I very much appreciate each one of you being here with us today. Just wanted to welcome you and for our upcoming event. So this is part of our FIWARE Domain Days. Coming up next, we have FIWARE Health Day, FIWARE Industry Day, and FIWARE Smart Cities Edition 1, as well as some fairs that FIWARE will be joining pretty much in the next months. Here are some of the links that you might want to check out. So if you want to know more about FIWARE, about what we do here, and how to get in touch with us, here you can see all the important contacts and links. And over the next slide, we have our email address that you can contact with us, especially if you have questions for the use cases. We had no questions here so far, but should you afterwards still have some questions regarding use cases, you want to know more about what Sensowave is doing, you want to know more about what engineering is doing, or what Hostabee, Maxime, is doing, please just connect with us, drop any questions that you might have into the chat. Once again, I take the opportunity here to thank our media partners for the incredible support that they have helped us in many ways. So, well, you know, again, biggest thanks to our premium media partner, Business Reporter, our media partners as well, Compact List, our Future Water, Top Networks, as well as Zoom. So as I mentioned before, here is the email address to which you can reach us. Should there be any further questions that you might have to any of our speakers, or you want to know more about FIWARE, how to get involved with us, please don't be shy, contact us straight away. And thank you for your patience. We managed to finish just half an hour behind. And with that, and in very high style, I close today's event. And I do appreciate you guys being here with me along the way. It was an absolutely pleasure, and I will see you at our next event. Have a good afternoon, morning, and evening, everybody.